Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here, and it's not nice to be here. It's a very difficult time. I can guarantee that every Israeli in this room either lost someone like the Shai family, or knows someone who did, or has 2 or 3 sons or daughters serving now at the front, or is running a company where 10% or 20% of the employees are gone at the front, or their spouses. And I actually interviewed for an article we wrote recently, I think it was the head of Facebook Israel, and she said, everyone in Israel is in Tzav Shmoneh, which means in Hebrew, order number 8, which is the order that you get. It could be a phone call or a text message saying, come now to your unit. As thousands and thousands of Israelis did from all over the world, packing the planes coming back to Israel, trying to desperately get a seat. But not only is everyone in Tzav Shmoneh going into the military, everyone else in Israel is in Tzav Shmoneh, because everyone is involved somehow, volunteering, somehow creating, somehow covering for all those people who are at the front. So we said in Startup Nation that Israelis are connected by 1 degree of separation, and that means everybody, all the Israelis in the room know each other. But it also means this connection now after October 7th. And what you are seeing now, I would say, in Israel, this Tzav Shmoneh moment, is what we wrote about in our book, The Genius of Israel, the surprising resilience of a divided nation in a turbulent world. A strange title in these days. I actually had people close to me saying, our book was scheduled to come out on November 7th. And they said to me, you must be postponing this release. Don't do it right now. And I said to them, and many people I think have since said about the book, that it's tragically relevant. It's speaking to what we're seeing right now. It's describing this incredible solidarity that we're seeing at this moment. That is hard to believe, especially given what was happening the day before. Israel went from the depths of division to the heights of solidarity within hours. And this is not possible for every other country. We can't take this for granted. I think people sometimes think, 9/11, everybody got together, or after some sort of attack. This is different in Israel. This kind of total mobilization of society, everyone dropping everything to see what they can do to help, as we've heard in this conference. That's not possible to do on a dime. That was built over Israel's history, entire history. A kind of building of solidarity, of this group mentality. And the reason we wrote this book is that, Dan Senor, my co-author, is sitting in New York. I'm sitting in Jerusalem. And we talk a lot about the situation in America and in Israel. And our conversation started going to this fact that in the US, they have this thing called deaths of despair. You heard of the opioid epidemic. Well, this is deaths of despair, are deaths from suicide, from alcohol abuse, from drug abuse. And these are called deaths of despair. And this is a crisis in the United States. And I was saying, Israel doesn't feel like that. And we started looking into it. And it turns out that if you look at the figures of the OECD, you compare all the countries, Israel has the lowest of these kind of deaths. And the US is among the highest. But it's not just the US. It's also, say, the Scandinavian countries or France or Germany. They're all way above Israel. Why is that? And we kept looking into this more and more. And, you know, the most tragic part of that thing is teen suicides. It's shocking what has happened with this, that in 1982, in just one hospital in New Jersey, there were 250 emergency room cases of teens hurting themselves, suicide, whatever. By 2010, that had jumped to 3,000. And by 2022, 8,000. And again, with teen suicide, Israel is among the lowest in the world, a fraction, a third of the OECD average, a quarter of countries like the United States, Canada. Something was going on here. We really didn't know, and we kept looking into it and trying to figure it out. And we kept coming up with more and more data. And another one was life expectancy. I mean, one way of measuring the health of society, a kind of a basket measure of lots of aspects of the health of society, is life expectancy, including that goes into it mental health and all kinds of health, stress, so on. And Israel's 9th in the world in life expectancy, which is higher than, again, some of the best countries in Europe. It's about 1 year higher, I think, than the UK, 4 years higher than the United States. Again, what's going on here? Israelis are bathed in stress. You know, with the teen suicide stuff, one of the explanations is that these youth are exposed to social media, to smartphones, to, climate change and all these causes of stress. And in Israel, the same young people are exposed to these same things. And yet we don't have these problems. And we're trying to figure it out. And then it just goes on, though. It's that Israel is a much younger country. We're looking at a crisis, a demographic collapse throughout Europe. We're looking at a situation where in Japan, there are already more over 70 years old people than under 20. There are already more adult diapers sold than baby diapers in Japan for years now. But, if you look in 2050, Israel's median age is going to be about 33. In the OECD, it'll be about 47, about almost 50% higher. In Japan, about 55. So we're looking at Japan as the oldest country, but everybody else is going there. That's just, it's a taste of things to come. And why is this? It's because the fertility rate. If your fertility rate is below 2.1, which is replacement, you're aging and shrinking. If you're above, then you're young and growing. That's just kind of arithmetic of demography. And every single rich country in the world is below replacement. The OECD average fertility rate is about 1.6. And if your UK's maybe slightly higher, but everyone's below 2.1, except Israel. Israel is about 3, double. What's going on here? And people think it must be the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox. It's not that. They're about 10, 12% of the population. And if any of you know Tel Aviv, you know the entrepreneurs, actually, and the VCs. The normal number of kids is 3 kids. If you have 2, it's a little bit small. If you have 4, it's a little bit big, not so big. If you have 4, it's like extra credit, which I think Israel must be the only country certainly the only rich country, where having more kids is considered a good thing, even kind of a high status thing. There was a katava, there was an article on TV that 4 is the new 3. It just seemed like that, So what happens when a country is aging and shrinking versus young and growing? A country where people that's just getting older feels like a country that's kind of shutting down. It's not a country that's thinking as much about the future. These things matter. They matter for the dynamism of society, for the innovative energy of society, for the optimism of society. I mean, having a child is probably the most optimistic act you can do. And Israelis are optimistic. And I believe even today. You know, it's a little hard to tell what's going to happen now with Israeli society. I think that our major challenge as a country is to stay together, to keep the unity that we have, not to go back to October 6th, not to go back to those divisions. And I don't think there are any guarantees on that. It feels right now like everyone is committed. Everyone feels the same way. Everyone feels we can't lose this. We don't want to go back to that division. And yet sometimes, even when everybody feels like that, it happens. So we're going to have to work very hard to keep everyone together. And we're going to have to draw on the things that made us a united country. You know, why are we united? Why do we have this feeling of belonging, this sense of purpose? I think that it starts very early on. Young people children going to youth movements. We talk about the word, there's a word in Hebrew called gibush, which means kind of bringing people together. You know, it's like, they talk about team building, but it's much more emotionally charged word than that. And it happens at a very early age. It happens in school and class. It happens in youth movements. It happens in these pre-army programs. And most strongly, it happens in the military, because militaries have to do kibbutz. Militaries have to form a unit. They have to teach people to work in teams to accomplish missions. And that's why Israelis are so mission-oriented. That's a big reason why we have so many startups. So, to this point about why we're here in terms of investing in Israel, the Shai Families Initiative, how does this impact the world of Startup Nation? How does this impact the Israeli economy going forward? And I think it impacts it across the board. Again, if you're a young and growing country, you got more energy, you got more innovation, you're thinking about the future. If you have a sense of purpose. Now, before this, Israelis had a sense of purpose, but that sense of purpose somehow, I think it's multiplied. Because look at the name of this conference, Restart IL. That's talking about startups. But we actually have to restart the country. And there's a feeling in Israel of that. Because October 7th, in a way, took us back to 1948. For 12 hours, for 24 hours, whatever it was, we experienced what it's like not to have a country. Sorry. Our country wasn't there. And there's this determination not to let that happen again. And there's a feeling that this was a failure of Zionism, of the whole purpose of Israel. I actually believe the purpose of Israel is not just to survive, not just to be a refuge from the Jewish people. I think it would be horrible if that's Israel's only purpose. Our purpose is to change the world. And I think that we are going to rededicate ourselves to that purpose in a way that we never did before. And that will give us the strength to be united. And that's going to show up in the startups. It's going to show up in every single way we rebuild the country. Because now, when we wrote Startup Nation, one of the things we wrote about is that the startups are very patriotic, the entrepreneurs. It's very unusual. Where else do the entrepreneurs from France or anywhere else, do they go around boasting about the innovation of their economy? Do they go about like ambassadors for their country? Well, our entrepreneurs do. They have this sense of purpose that actually the startup world believes that they're doing something important for the country. And actually, in the past year, over these months of protest, the high-tech community woke up in an incredible way. They were totally apolitical. And suddenly, they decided that democracy is at threat and we have to go save it. And they mobilized like crazy. They became leaders of the protest movement. And in fact, that organization of the protest movement was shifted 100% to helping the country come together and all the needs after October 7th. So I want to end with a quote that we used in the book. It's from a war correspondent who wrote many books called Sebastian Junger. And he's trying to explain why we have these terrible sicknesses of modern life. Why, as countries get richer, are they getting weaker as societies, sicker as societies? And what he argues, and many others, is that modern society is becoming less human. He says, humans don't mind hardship. In fact, they thrive on it. What they mind is not feeling necessary. And Israel is a country where everyone feels necessary. They feel like they're building something. They're needed. And that's part of what I think makes us a healthier society. It's part of what brings us together. And it's part of what is going to save us in the future. Thank you.